Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago, former Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, Senior Counsel, has argued that state of emergency laws allowing a government minister to decide whether someone remains in detention are unconstitutional because they give judicial powers to the executive. And well said. I fully agree with him. You remember, it's supposed to have separation of powers, people. And what the Kamala Prasad administration has been doing is acting like as though they are the judiciary. It is crazy what has been taking place. Because remember, they are not using the SoE like how normal countries would do. Normal first world and even third world nations. You're only supposed to use an SoE for a short space of time and because of certain types of very serious circumstances. Or what circumstances we are talking about? We are talking about in case of an insurrection, a real insurrection, not just rumors that are spreading, but a real insurrection like in 1990, you need to have an SoE. In case of a widespread natural disaster like a hurricane or an earthquake, you have a state of emergency. It is temporary just to get things back in order, under control, to restore peace. You cannot use an SoE to fight crime because crime is an ongoing issue. It's a long-term issue. It is something that you cannot resolve. It's something that you cannot stop. You can only reduce. And therefore, if it is you intend to use an SoE to fight crime, that means you're going to use it for your whole term. We don't want to hear you say, oh, we are not planning to use it for a whole term. Because thus far, you have used it for nearly a year or maybe a little more than a year. So Kamala Prasad says, so you are actually performing, or you're actually governing this country as a dictator. There's no separation of powers right now and you are using the SoE to do so. Speaking at an event marking his 60 years as an attorney, Maharaj said both the 2011 SoE regulations and the current framework undermine the separation of powers and should not be used as tools to fight ordinary crime. Haven't I been saying that? And I am nowhere near as brilliant as Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, or educated. But I am blessed with common sense. And therefore I know you're not supposed to be using an SoE to fight crime. God have mercy on this woman, Kamala Prasad, because what you're doing is destroying the UNC with your radical sorts of concepts. And you're being encouraged by John Jeremy and Roger Alexander. This is what has emboldened you to become such a dictator, because you were never like that in the past. You made a mistake in 2011, but at least it was something that was temporary still. And it was a limited state of emergency because it was in certain particular areas. And yet there were lawsuits and people won lawsuits because of being detained wrongfully. By goodness, boy. Referring to the ongoing constitutional challenge involving businessman Dominic Hadid, he said the case raises fundamental constitutional issues beyond individual detentions. Maharaj also reflected on his legal career, highlighting the Judicial Review Act, Freedom of Information Act, and Equal Opportunity Act as key achievements. Chief Justice Ronnie Budu Singh praised Maharaj's 6 decades, of legal service, describing him as a model of integrity, scholarship, and professionalism, and encouraged him to document his contributions for the future generations. My response: the radicals in UNC today, and I've been warning about these radicals, and I just didn't know Kamala herself was a radical as well. The radicals in UNC today are not the same as who governed under our nation under Pandey. Pandey's UNC was a wonderful UNC. It wasn't perfect, but it was a wonderful UNC. They weren't perfect. Maharaj has his controversies, but it cannot be compared to what Roger Alexander and Kamala is doing to the government, to the UNC and our country at this point in time. Cannot be compared. So they weren't perfect, and of course, in some ways, Lawrence Maharaj is probably a hypocrite. You know when people raise anything with the Dolce and whatsoever, whatever, that is in the past, number one. And besides that, the certain type of laws that when it pertains to capital punishment should be bypassed anyhow you take it. Those human rights laws or whatsoever, those human rights laws, they don't really care about the people who are being murdered. It doesn't seem so. And yet the human rights people always speaking out against and mass murder and whatsoever. They always contradicted itself. So honestly speaking, yes, it has some kind of old talk for years about what Maharaj did and whatever and all kind of thing and who he was conspiring with or whatever. That old talk, there was never ever any evidence to prove that the man was involved in anything. So at the end of the day, what the man did was use the laws of Trinidad and Tobago in order to enforce our capital punishment law. You understand? To carry it out. And whoever vexed about that, they lost. That's the problem. So they weren't perfect, and of course, in some ways, Lawrence Maharaj is considered, in other words, a hypocrite. But Pandey never used an SoE to reduce crime or attempted to transform our nation into a police state. Never once. Never once. And Pandey had some types of autocratic ways about him, especially when it pertains to his own party. He didn't want to give up his leadership role. You know, he said it over and over again. He was going to sail into the sunset, and then he didn't. But at the end of the day, the man never governed our nation as a dictator. Robinson never governed our nation as a dictator. Rowley did it. Manning kind of way, but still, and neither Manning or Rowley ever used an SoE to fight crime for a long space of time. No, Rowley used an SoE to be able to keep things under control because of COVID. And people will give him he will be given an exception because of that, because a lot of other countries around the world did it. I don't agree with it. I never agreed with it. I did not agree with the lockdowns or anything like that. But people still say that was something out of the normal. It was abnormal what was taking place back then. It was because of a pandemic. So you know, people still say, okay, we'll give it an exception because of that, right? But we're talking about fighting crime. Rowley started it though. Rowley set the precedent. Rowley declared a crime to be a health issue, which was ridiculous by itself. And then of course, therefore, he started to use the SoE. But it didn't have sufficient time to show whether or not he would have continued with it, because he ended up retiring as Prime Minister. And then Zami Young declared elections one time, and therefore that was it there. So we cannot say for sure if the PNM administration would have continued to use it then. I know for sure, seeing that they're realizing that Kamala is getting away with it now. If the Privy Council does not strike down this completely and say you cannot continue to govern your nation via an SoE, then the PNM is going to use it in the future as well. I went on to say Kamala began to show her true colors as a dictator back in 2011, but I overlooked it due to the government's good performance in general. And I always will say this, UNC in many ways will continue to govern the country much better than the PNM. The problem is, I am not going to support this administration as long as they're taking away and as long as they're infringing upon the constitutional rights of citizens. I am not going to support them. I'll give credit when credit is due, but I will not support them as long as they're acting like a dictatorship, treating our country as though it's a police state. No, that needs to stop. I honestly believe that both Roger Alexander and former PNM John Jeremy are the ones who have encouraged Kamala to become such an arrogant, deceptive, and evil Prime Minister. It may have others as well in the UNC that are radicals. But somehow or the other, how come is when these two men became part of the party and the administration, is when all of a sudden UNC just turned into a monster. Something wrong. Something wrong, because UNC was never this radical. It had the radicals all the time, but not this radical. Something is definitely wrong. I'm sure even the former tyrant Rowley is shocked to realize there's someone in TNT who is more demonic than him, who is acting even more evil than him. Emperor Thanos Rowley is what I used to call him, you know. An evil emperor of Trinidad and Tobago, you know. And Kamala is behaving even more evil than this man and deceptive than this man in many, many ways.
Trinidad and Tobago official weather report for Sunday, July 26, 2026. On Sunday, July 26, 2026, Trinidad and Tobago will experience generally sunny, warm, and slightly hazy conditions during the daytime. The Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service indicates a daytime high temperature of 31 degrees Celsius in Trinidad and 31 degrees Celsius in Tobago. The overnight low temperature will drop to 24 degrees Celsius in Trinidad and 25 degrees Celsius in Tobago. Atmospheric conditions feature a mild to moderate concentration of Saharan dust, and sensitive individuals are advised to take necessary precautions to protect their respiratory health. There is a low 30% chance of a few light showery intervals interrupting the sunshine, mainly over northeastern areas of Trinidad and parts of Tobago. Winds are forecast to blow from the east-northeast to southeast at speeds ranging from 10 to 30 km per hour. Marine conditions in open waters will remain slight to moderate, with wave heights ranging from 10 meters to 1.5 meters, while sheltered areas will experience smooth seas below 10 meters. The midday heat index is expected to peak near 34 degrees Celsius, which will make outdoor conditions feel significantly hotter than the actual ambient air temperature. Nighttime conditions will be generally fair and clear despite a low probability of an isolated passing shower after midnight.
International news now. The Iranian regime has in recent days avoided launching attacks against Israel thus far, while targeting neighboring Arab countries because they are bullies. Not the Arab countries, the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah and the IRGC are bullies, amid rising military tensions with the United States. The situation has prompted speculation over why Tehran has refrained from opening another front against Israel, despite its long-standing calls for the Jewish state's destruction. They call Israel Little Satan, people, and America Big Satan. Those two countries they want to utterly destroy so that they can usher in the coming of their Messiah. Retired IDF intelligence officer Lieutenant Colonel Horowitz said he believes Tehran is currently holding back because a renewed confrontation with Israel could further weaken Hezbollah terror group in Lebanon, Iran's most powerful regional proxy. And it shows something. It proves something. They know very well that the Lebanese army is incapable of dismantling and destroying Hezbollah on their own people. And this is why it was so foolish. The deal that was made between Israel and Lebanon is foolish. And of course, it's Trump and his people that came up with the idea. Because you know why? Removing the Israeli troops, the IDF troops from Lebanon, is going to endanger the lives of the Israelis in the Northern Territory again. Because I am telling you, Amr Safati has said it over and over again. Right? The Bible teacher, the Messianic Jew and Bible teacher, Amr Safati has said it over and over again. The Lebanese military is incapable of subduing and defeating the Hezbollah terrorists. So it's only the IDF had that capability, and that is why they're saying here they don't want to end up causing any sort of conflict with Israel right now. At least they're trying to restrain themselves for now, because they don't want any kind of excuse for Israel to end up going back in a very significant way into Lebanon. Now, they haven't pulled out of Lebanon completely yet, but they're in the process of doing so. And this is what is terribly wrong. Terribly wrong. The agreement should have stated that not until Hezbollah has been completely destroyed, then and only then can the IDF be removed and withdraw from Lebanon. It is craziness what is taking place. And once again, Trump. Because why? Trump always thinks as though he is the master of the art of the deal. Most of the deals you're making in the Middle East is a waste of time, Donald Trump. We are preparing for every possibility. If Iran attacks Israel, it will suffer a crushing blow. And trust me, when Israel says that, they mean it. Israel Katz, Israeli defense minister, said, the Israeli military raised its alert level while several municipalities across the country announced the opening of public shelters as Israel entered a tense weekend amid concerns that Iran could launch an attack. And it could at any point in time. Because that's how they are. They are bullies. They are bullies. They're not going to just fight against the Americans. They will target anyone that is associated with the Americans and their American bases situated in those countries. The heightened alert comes after the Iranian regime targeted several countries across the region, and as exchanges of fire with the United States have escalated in recent weeks. We continue to pray for the people of Israel. We continue to pray that God will cover them and protect them, and we know that He will never let them be completely destroyed, but that no lives will be lost in this time of war, in the northern areas especially. But even in the whole of Israel, it's a tiny country compared to these other countries. And if the Iron Dome is unable to destroy even one missile, a lot of people could lose their lives.
Bible quote of the day. Psalm 17:12-14. David's prayer for protection from the wicked. They are like a lion hungry for prey, like a fierce lion crouching in cover. Rise up, Lord, confront them, bring them down, with your sword rescue me from the wicked. By your hand save me from such people, Lord, from those of this world whose reward is in this life.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's news report. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe, most of all, in Jesus' name.